So I think one of the things that I took away from that is there's a difference between the quality of production and the quality of content, which I think is really significant. And also I really love the additional value uses that Ian mentioned, the kind of the waste walks, and that was a great idea. So our next speaker is Emma Barrow, who has been with Royal Mail Group since 2009, joined as a graduate and is now head of digital learning, with a background in graphic design and comms, so bringing a slightly different perspective, I think, to the kind of traditional learning role. And she has already delivered Royal Mail's first fully video-based course to 140,000 employees. So I've got another speaker who really knows what she's talking about. Take it away, Emma.
I think that's a bit of a stretch, but we'll see. So first, I'd just like to say a little bit about Ian's presentation. Easily the best one I've seen in the last 2 days, and I'm not just saying that because you're within striking distance. And when we have the same technical challenges as Ian, we do try and adopt the very same approach. So I think for technical training, user-generated video is definitely, in my view, the way forward for all the reasons that Ian's covered. The example I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today is slightly different. It's much more behaviourally based, but as Ian's Blockbuster example showed, there are ways you can make that training through video a lot more engaging than maybe typically in the past. So as Stephanie quite nicely introduced me, I'm head of learning for Royal Mail, head of digital learning, a team that only formed about 6 months ago. I suppose many of you probably work in companies that don't have specific digital learning teams or maybe are thinking of putting one in. It was a fairly brave decision, and we went from nothing to sort of 100 miles an hour very quickly. And this project that I'm going to talk about is pretty much the first one I delivered, so it was very lucky it was a success. So the problem we were talking about, what was the problem? We operate, our wider learning team operates with a business partner model. So we've got business partners that go all over the country, various different parts of the business, work with the commercial sector, the operations sector, etc. And they come back and they feed in problems to the creative teams, problems that need solutions. And we had people banging on about difficult conversations. I'm sure probably all of you in the room have worked for a company where you've done some training on difficult conversations. And we've had training on difficult conversations. In fact, we have things in our catalogue, but they tend to be full-day training courses, half-day training courses, even bite-sized training courses involve people trepping out of the office into a training centre. So we wanted to do something digitally. And as a learning newbie, I went out and spoke to various people, other companies, about what they'd done. And people started sucking in air through their teeth when I said I wanted to do it through some e-learning, through some online learning. Ooh, not for behavioural training. Not so sure about that, but I wanted to give it a go, so we did. And the other problem was this mistrust and dislike of e-learning relay. It had become sort of synonymous with a bit of a swear word in the company. And if any of you were unlucky enough to watch my Google Hangout yesterday, we had a bit of a chat about this. And Royal Mail actually, surprisingly, were very early adopters of e-learning. We had e-learning 10, 15 years ago when other companies hadn't even got started, due to the nature of our workforce and how sporadically based they are. But as a result, people thought that's what digital learning was, and that's all it could ever be. So we had a little bit of a challenge with that. So what was the idea? Now, the idea was actually born this time last year at Learning Technologies. So I was scouting around downstairs, brand new to learning, didn't know what I was really looking for an idea that I could take and use. And it just so happened that this challenge came up not long after that. So I was downstairs looking around, and it was actually a supplier called Sponge that I ended up working with. And they'd done a little demonstration for their show reel it wasn't done with a client, it was just done on their own backs to kind of demonstrate a technique that they wanted to try. And I put my hand up and said, I will try this, I will try it, and go ahead. So what did we do? How did we approach the problem then from that point on? We took control of it. I did go with my gut instinct on the choice of solution and said there was no proof that it would work. There was no client that had originally done this already. I did argue with my colleague whether maximal is a word. It is. So we went for an approach where I got lots of input from my learners, people that had been vocal about the failings of courses in the past, people that hated e-learning, for want of a better word, and wanted to try something new. And in terms of customer input, I kept that really low. So we had all these customers across the business all wanting difficult conversational training. If I'd have spent all my time dealing with them, I'd have got a solution that was probably not what the learner wanted, wouldn't have been as engaging, and would have taken me, I'd have still been working on it now. Whereas we got this from an idea that had never become to a fully fledged product that was being used in less than 12 weeks. And that included all the filming, which was fairly technical. So you might think this is a bit backwards, but I'm going to show you the results first. And that was really because I was thinking, it's the last session, day 2. There's going to be a lot of people looking at the watches going, can I make the 6 o'clock train? Can I not? Probably a few delicate heads in the room. So I thought if I show you the results of this course first, you might perk up your ears a little bit more for the product itself. So the first thing is just the learner demographic. So interesting specifically for me, and apologies, it's not very clear on the right-hand side, the gender and the age range of the learners, and this is from a sample of around 2,000 people who've taken the course, is vastly disproportionate to our company norm. So your male and female split is fairly equal. We actually have less than 30% females in the whole business. And actually in the core operation, it's about 13%. So very interesting that that's different. And the same with the age range. Our typical age range is much more towards the right-hand side of that spectrum, but the learners choosing to take this course on are much more on this side. And the next step for us, which I would encourage you to do yourself, is we're going to see if this was specific to this course or whether actually that's more akin to general digital learning. And also we looked at how they come across the module, and the bottom one that's got around 50% of the votes was they were just browsing our LMS. Browsing an LMS. They actually were wanting to learn and no one was telling them to. And that for us was very eye-opening, and we've actually had a new LMS in the last 12 months, and it sort of goes to explain why our item completions on the whole are up over 100% year on year, and we think it's that behaviour that's actually driving that. So what we did is we took 177 people who had completed the course. Now this was quite difficult because we didn't push this course out as a mandatory course or something that we wanted people to do in a certain time frame. We just let it seed completely at random. So I had to put quite a bit of man hours into finding out when people had completed the course and chasing them up just as they completed, then 30 days and 60 days. So at 30 days post-course completion, what I really wanted to know was did they enjoy it, which the right-hand side shows that they did. And actually, did they try anything out? Because the video bit that I'm going to show you, which is the bulk of the course, was also surrounded with some kind of worksheets, top tips, little models they could use for conversations. And 10% people said, no, I didn't try it out, you know, whatever. And we asked a couple of people why, and it was time, or I didn't understand it, and, you know, so things we have to look into. 17% said, yes, I did. 73% said, yes, I did, and I did it more than once. So I went back and I tried it maybe in different circumstances or different scenarios. So that was really encouraging. I practically danced around the room. One of my colleagues is in the room and he would vouch for that. And then we went back again to the same people. So their comments, you know, we don't really do formal level 1 evaluations for online learning, but we've got a star-based rating system on the LMS. So regular 5-star comments. If you download the slides after the show, you'll be able to sort of read some of those. But the best thing was the 60 days post-completion. So this is 177 people. Would you say you have made lasting changes to how you approach potentially difficult conversations? 90% said yes. Now, you know, we had to be careful how we approach this. So I ran all the surveys myself. I'm completely independent. I made it very clear that if you think this is crap, tell me, because I won't do it again. I will do something that's more suitable for what you need. And then we had qualifying conversations with the people that said yes, and sometimes with their line manager to kind of back up that. So even if I take that slightly with a pinch of salt, I'm still really pleased. And then the bottom is we asked them if they had made changes, who were those changes with? So was it conversations with them colleagues, with their team, with their manager? And the majority were colleagues and with their team. But what I found really interesting was 14% said with their customers, and that was something we hadn't planned on tackling with this module at all, and the scenarios that we chose for the interactive videos were nothing to do with customer service directly. There was a slight element in there, but that was really good because it was showing me that learners were taking what we were teaching them in one example and applying it in a different circumstance, which was really encouraging. So the solution itself. We'll have a little look at the module in action. So what we did was we picked 3 potential scenarios where you would have a difficult conversation. One was an unplanned circumstance. So you're in your office as a manager and something happens and you've got to deal with that, and that's the one we're going to show. We had a more planned typical conversation, like you've scheduled a meeting with someone and you need to bring up a performance issue. And then we had one where you were managing upwards. You were talking to your manager about a difficult situation that you were in and you wanted to approach that with them. And we chose those based on all these needs that came in, and we decided to film all the videos from first person. So it's quite engaging, it's different, it's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit less static than usual. So we will have a look now. I'll have to switch my screen. So the scene opens and you're driving into work, and for any gamers amongst you, when the person gets out of the car, you'll enjoy the little motion of them bobbing along. I felt like they should have some sort of weapon in front of them, which made me laugh quite a bit. We clearly picked the sunniest day in the Bradford calendar year as well, which was lucky. Morning, boss. So we purposely kept this video so that you cannot see the person behind the camera at all. You don't even see hands, you don't hear them speak, because we wanted them to really become that person.
Len, we need you on the primary sort.
Excludes the Royal Mail language.
Well, I'll just do everything then, huh?
Well, see my starring role there as an extra. Costs were cut. So this is a scenario where Carl has used bad language in the workplace. What do you do? Now, we could have put a timer on here, but we chose not to. It's the first time we've done this course. We didn't know how people would react, how long it would take them to compute. So there's a few options. And the reason we didn't sort of film this bit is that we can then go back and change these options without reshooting the scene, which is good. So, I'm going to choose this one. I am going to confront the team about bad language.
Why are you blaming all of us? Carl was the one who was swearing.
So I'm the only one who swears around here.
You're just as bad.
F off.
That's actually one of the project managers at Sponge who has found his calling as an actor. So again, what can I do? So I might realise by this point, oh, wait a minute, that might not have been quite the right choice. So I'll talk to Carl about it privately instead.
Just under a lot of pressure, okay? It won't happen again.
So clearly, see, he's brilliant, isn't he? Clearly you've upset Carl a little bit there. You probably should have handled that a bit more tactfully. So you can try again. So it takes you back to the beginning. So this time, I think that might have been the right option, so I'll go with that. I'll see what happens.
Look, you can't blame me for being frustrated. I'm covering the primary sort, my route, and that's the longest, and now basically another 2 rounds because of people on sick. It's always me carrying the weight.
Clearly not the most happy of employees. And again, you get choices. Now, this particular example, they're quite nuanced. So we want people to try different ways and actually get it wrong as well as getting it right, because that's where most of the learning happens. But I'll pick the right option, which is the mentioning the customer, because that's big for our values.
You're right. I shouldn't have snapped, especially in front of a customer. Everyone's just really stressed with the extra workload.
And he's dropping hints, he's dropping hints about his workload. And this was the right option in this case. So, we want to schedule some time for a discussion. We don't want to just correct the behaviour without exploring it further, because he's mentioned this workload thing 2 or 3 times. As a good manager, and this all aligns very clearly with our new business values, we really want to explore
I'd really
that.
appreciate that meeting, thanks, because workload has been causing stress. But I know I lost my temper, and I won't let it happen again.
So this is the end of this particular scenario, and you've actually, and AID, by the way, is a model that we introduced earlier in the module, but you've reached a positive outcome now, so that's really good. So you can play another way if you want. You can go back and try and get it wrong. Some of the examples, as you've seen, are fairly amusing, and it is quite entertaining to play through. You can try another conversation. We don't have time for that today. But what's really nice is we also added in some feedback.
I think they were firm but fair. I was swearing and shouldn't be. Like it was explained, it has a negative impact. It was good the boss listened to why I was frustrated and took me seriously. We're having a meeting about workload, which is a bit of a weight off my mind.
So we did that for every scenario, that at the end you got to kind of see it from that person's point of view and how that conversation had made them feel now that you navigated it in the correct way. So that was the module, and as I say, there was plenty of options you can play with. I'm just going to try and go back quickly to the presentation. Okay, brilliant. So positive conversations is what we called it. We have 3 new business values in Royal Mail, part of a big culture change aspiration, and they are be positive, be brilliant, and be part of it. So we really tried to feed that into the learning because it came out around that time, and it helped get people buying into it at a senior level who were still very sceptical about this idea. So what I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to talk to you about is some of the things that I thought were key decisions in this project that really help it become such a success. So things that I think gave us a quality outcome, gave us an outcome that was engaging and actually got us those great results and a really high adoption rate, considering we absolutely did not push it to people. We did not make it mandatory. We did not even assign it to people as recommended, which is our sneaky way of making things mandatory but not. We did none of that. So there's a couple of things that I think were really important. The first one is a supplier and team selection. So that applies both to my team internally in the business, but the people that I choose to work with. And if you happen to be sat near seat G1, you will find my lovely director, Phil, who you can see his not so smiling face on those photos. So when it comes to my internal team, I've purposely surrounded myself with people who really don't know much about L&D, because the wider L&D team that I sit within is chock full of those people, absolutely chock full of them. And that gives us a really good opportunity to work with them, get their expertise, but also help them learn a little bit more about digital. So my team internally, they've got two things in common. They're all very creative, so they've come from creative backgrounds. They're either designers like myself, or they are of other disciplines, marketing for one, things like that. And also they are very curious people. They're very curious people, and they have a real passion for what they do. So they're always spending time at places like this, learning about new stuff and coming back. And that really helps us drive forward very quickly with a really aggressive agenda on digital learning. And then when it comes to selecting the supplier, and also the people that we work with alongside the supplier, that was really important to us. And none of these people had worked with Royal Mail before, but we ended up with a piece of content that was way more realistic than anything else we'd ever had. And they fully immersed themselves into our business and really got to grips with the language, the attitudes, the culture, and actually what happened on a day-to-day basis in the office. So we used real filming locations, we didn't use any sets, we used as small amount of actors as possible, and the ones that we chose were very high quality. But that was really important to us. But while you're doing that and you're getting all giddy about getting all these great creative people in a room and having a load of fun, we had to remember the planning aspect. We had a really short timescale to deliver this project in, and we could have gone wild, and we could have been filming for 3 weeks, spending all the money, because if you know creative people, they don't tend to like a plan. Microsoft project is a swear word in my world, and I really don't like it. So I hired people who could do that and pin me down to review dates and pin me down to filming dates, and it made the whole thing a dream. So that was something I found that I really, just because I don't like it myself doesn't mean I don't appreciate it when I see it elsewhere. The next thing is a bit about longevity. Video is not cheap. It isn't cheap if you're doing this more corporate side. And for this is what we needed to do. So we just had to be smart, really smart with the scripting. Don't use buzzwords or project words that might disappear in a few weeks. I actually found out that they were potentially changing the uniform of our employees, which was a nightmare. But the one thing that they'll never change is the red polo shirt in this picture. So I made sure everyone was wearing red polo shirts so that even if they changed the jackets, I wouldn't have to reshoot anything. So all those kind of decisions were really, really important for me about making it interactive. But also it was remembering that user feedback. So whilst I tried to take the buzzwords out as much as possible, it had to be realistic. I didn't want my scripting and my actors to be using words that my people wouldn't use. We actually were going to keep the real swear word in. The only reason we didn't is because despite being clever and picking the day that the office is quietest to film the video, there was a constant stream of customers with small children walking into that office. And every time we thought the coast was clear and he was ready to drop the F-bomb, a small child walked in. So we had to get him to say fudging, and then we had to beep it so it sounded like he was really swearing. So even with your best laid plans, sometimes it goes a little bit wrong. You've got to think on your feet. The other thing is technical challenges. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about this now because I'm sure everybody has their own, and I'll happily answer questions on it at the end. But we've got colleagues closer to Norway than the mainland UK. I've got a post lady who works on an island with no roads. Her mail comes on a little rowing boat with the sheep from the following island. Her dial-up internet, I presume, is run on hamster wheels. I don't know. But the course will still work where she is because we were very smart on how it works. And with interactive video, it's only ever loading the next video in the sequence. So there's no big buffering times. It's really cleverly done. And it was trial and error. I got the guys to produce 3 different versions because when you've spent that time filming, you want it to look good when you've spent the money. But we got 3 different versions, and I went out in my car and drove to lots of remote areas of North Yorkshire and tried it out in all the different offices. It was worth the investment in time because now I know it works and I can do it again. And then the last tip really is about marketing your content. So this was the very, very first course we have ever produced that we produced just for the sake of doing it in a way. Because us as L&D had spotted this big need that was wide-ranging, we put a solution in to fix it, and thus it wasn't a mandatory course, it wasn't assigned to people. So we had to really work a bit harder on marketing it. So we used there was some animations earlier in the course, we used those as teaser campaigns on screens in the units. This is a screenshot from our social learning platform that sits behind our LMS. We marketed it on there. We marketed it to other L&D people in the company who could then talk to their customers about it, etc., etc. And this also allowed people to comment socially on the content and sort of feedback the positives, negatives, what we could do better for next time. So I suppose what's next for us in terms of video? We're actually doing a Mark II of this project right now. We've just finished filming. We're ready to get the module delivered. It's been developed much quicker than the first version because we learned and we know how to do it well now. We're focusing purely on performance conversations in that one because that's where a real specific need has been identified. And that's really exciting, so I can't wait to see that in the next couple of weeks. The other thing is that this course has really helped us change the perception of L&D in the business. And I know it sounds silly because it's one course, but all of a sudden we're more credible than we ever have been because we've produced something that people like, they enjoy, it delivered results, and it was fun for them. So it's really helped us, especially with the customers who are longer serving. We've got a very long serving culture in Royal Mail, to understand that this is the art of the possible. There's fun things you can do with learning. So it's helped us introduce other concepts, so gamification, that sort of thing, where previously they wouldn't have even entertained it. So that's really helped. And actually this course has really helped. Sorry, my watch is now telling me I'm running over. It's vibrating very angrily. It's helped us identify that there's been a real growing interest in video. And again, I think the contrast isn't quite good enough on this graph, but where the graph marks 1, that's when we've launched the teaser for the course and people started watching videos. And this actual graph shows our overall minutes on our YouTube channel for views. So not just the videos about the course, the other videos that we had there. So as the course was launched, you see we hit a peak. And then as things die down a bit, we sort of level out around the number 3, where we're at an elevated level to where we were before. And then there's the Christmas dip. Everybody in Royal Mail goes out on delivery at Christmas, literally everybody. So not much time for watching video. And then as we've gone into the new year, we're back peaking again. So we think that this course in particular has really helped pique people's interest in video and see that it's not those boring things that they were used to. So I'm going to end my little section with just 3 top tips from me as someone who's created this content to you. First one is be brave. Be brave. You know, it's one of the only functions in the business where you can take a risk and it's almost at nil cost. You know, we spent a few £1,000s developing this project, that's fine. If it had been rubbish, it was rubbish and I wouldn't do it again, but how do I know until I've tried it? So be brave, try new things. You know, no other customer had tried this with this supplier, so we just went and did it because it looked great and we knew it would be good. Be positive, and this is beyond just the fact that it's one of our business values that I really resonate with personally, but we have found an unrelenting positive attitude is the biggest breaker down of barriers with our customers internally. So if they come to us with a load of excuses and reasons why it won't work, we will sit there and be smiley and happy and discuss those issues with them until they are convinced that they're going to give it a try. And it's really helped us out. And then the third one is just make it memorable. You know, the couple of clips I showed you raised a few smiles and got a few laughs in the room, but whether it's happy emotion or in our latest course, we've got a couple of tear-jerkers that literally filming them, we were all blubbing in the corner, but that will make it memorable. That will resonate with people and they will remember that. So thank you, that's me done, and I know we're going to have questions for both of us now.
Thank you, Emma. So some fantastic stats there, I think, from Emma's project, and also some really good tie-in with the earlier session on story and emotion in learning. I don't know if anyone was in that session, that really ties in well. So we've got now about 20 minutes for Q&A with Emma and with Ian. Does anyone have, first of all, is there a microphone going? Perfect, Annie. Does anyone have a question immediately? Someone down at the front here.
One of the things I've picked up last year and here is the importance of authenticity in video. And Emma, one of the things you said really struck me was you said you tried to have as few actors as possible. In an ideal world, would you have had no actors?
Yeah, in an ideal world, as Ian does, I would have my people in those videos purely. And I think that longer term, we would do that. Us, like Ian, are a very heavily unionised industry, and getting postmen involved in this kind of thing is quite tricky when it doesn't have a proven track record. But absolutely, we've got people, you know, we've got almost 150,000 employees, so we've got people who are probably better than the paid actors out there. So definitely, yeah, I would pursue that.
Thank you.
Just a question for Ian, really. How long do you make your videos? This is a good question, actually.
And I just want to write into that. So do you edit them much? Because I've tried to make some of these, and apart from the schoolboy errors of filming the car park and then my tummy, I shake my head a lot.
Yep.
And it's driven me nuts, you know, trying to edit these things.
I completely agree. So we've tried a bunch of different techniques on this. We tried the long form shoot, the whole thing, unedited, and that's horrible because you have to invest a ton in going through and figuring out what to remove. This goes back to the discussion point about production. Production time is immense, and I don't have a really good way to cut this down. But we found that if you shoot in 2 to 3 minute clips, it gives you the ability to sort of match it to a story better, and it cuts the editing time a lot. And it also allows you to serve the content up a little bit easier when you're trying to get at it for editing. So 2 to 3 minutes, anything longer than that, you're just hunting through, trying to find what's valuable and what's not.
There's a question all the way over here. Annie, sorry.
It always works like that,
I might just, while you're running, I might just ask a quick, sorry, we need it for the recording. Emma, just really quickly, one of the things I was interested in was the option to replay videos or to play it again. Do you have any stats on how many people do that?
Yes and no. So we can't with the LMS that we use and the SCORM content, we can't measure with this particular course that level of detail. What we can find from our LMS is how long people have spent in the module. So if you play the module from start to finish, look at all the content up front, and you play each scenario kind of once, it takes about 25 minutes. But we've had people spending upwards of 2 hours in there. So some people whiz through it in 25 minutes, some people 30, we found about 45 is about the typical,
so
which is great.
A couple of different
options.
options.
And going back and playing it again. So
great, thanks.
Hi, this is for Ian. Ian, I don't know whether I missed it. Did you script or did you ask the workers to talk during the videos? Were they given a script? Would you have preferred them not to talk and then put audio over? What was the best approach?
We experimented with this a variety of different ways. What we found works best is to have the person have the procedure, and keeping in mind that our procedures kind of wishy-washy. So what we really want is to have them talk over it. And we've tried without the talk over, and then it's very difficult for someone who's non-technical to go and actually write down and do subtitles are fantastic because different people narrate different ways and sometimes you can't understand them. We couldn't do the subtitles without someone talking over top because, I tried doing it and I'm an engineer, but not that kind of engineer, so it was kind of a problem. So absolutely, we have them narrate what they're doing and we can cross-check too to the procedure.
Down here.
It's a question for Emma. You're just about to start on Mark 2.
Yeah.
Give me your top 3 lessons that things you'll do differently.
So things we did differently for Mark 2. We, the actual module itself, that video sits within some other content, and there was 2 reasons to that. One, we wanted people to introduce to a bit of a model that they could use, and then hopefully that would help them navigate the video. And also, this was very new for them, so we kind of wanted them to get in their comfort zone a bit with a few clicks, and then they were off. But I think that added too much time, and that meant that people, once they got into the video, they were already sort of 10, 12 minutes in, and thus we think that they spent less time in the actual value-added bit of the video. So I think we're going to cut that down. We're also going to increase the number of things that we have to take away after the module, because the value of playing the video is great and people want to go back and do that again and again, but we also want to give them more to take away that means that they don't have to go back to their computer to get some of the top tips, which really helps. And I think a third one would be, and I'm sure the colleagues who helped me develop this will hate me for this, but we've actually learnt we can do it quicker. So we did the first one in 2 days. The second one had a much more intense filming, a number of scenes to film, but we did it in a day and a half. So we've learned that we can do it more quickly based on that first one. But I think if we hadn't have done that, we wouldn't have known that. We know we'd have gone through the temptation that it takes weeks. But
I think there's just a few rows back on the right there.
Hi, I'm interested on the interactive aspect of the video. So did you edit the video yourself, and if so, what software did you use, or did you use an external company to do that for you?
No, I didn't do it myself. I could have done, but that would have taken me months. So although I like to play with it, no, we got an external company to do it. So they use Articulate to develop content, so they're an Articulate storyline producer. But the video was filmed in each individual scene. So each individual scene was filmed a number of times to get, you know, different, maybe slightly different intonations in the actor's voice, etc. And then the guys go and run it all together. They pick their chosen edits, and then the development company put it together with the interactions. But as I said, because we've kept the text separate, we can actually edit it ourselves if we have articulate storyline capability in the business afterwards.
Just a few rows down.
Thank you. I'm interested in the script for the interactive. Sorry, it's less about the technical videos, more about the competency one. How do you ensure that it was authentic with staff? Because in some ways the feedback is the textbook answer, but how does it sort of resonate as real within the business, where some people may be quite skeptical about some of the behaviours you're trying to bring in?
Yeah, so that was, as I mentioned, quite a focus of mine to get that right. One, as I mentioned in one of the slides, we got a great script writer, and Phil is here and he'll be really embarrassed for me to say this, but he's a brilliant script writer, and he is used to going into companies that have their own language, their own weird things, and picking that up in the script. So from day one, the scripts were great anyway. But I put a focus group together. So I put focus groups together with different levels of employee, with the target audience for the video itself, but also other people like postmen, quality managers, HR managers, all sorts of people that happen to be sat around me in Leeds and needed dragging in a room. And we just went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they took out words. I got them to, you know, which words didn't sound quite right. And as you said, it's difficult because, especially for the ideal scenario, that the reason we're doing the training is because that's not always happening. So it was hard to get that right. And obviously we didn't want to do it so that people would just carbon copy what was on the script either. But yeah, so the things where it was, the easy ones to script were the ones where it was going wrong, because that was behaviour that we could stand and watch and write down what they were saying and put it in the video. But the ones that were right, it was more challenging. But it was just talking to people, so getting them involved. And that's what I meant about the internal customer I wasn't too bothered about, because they write it in a really painful manner. It was all about the learners and the users and getting them involved.
We've got a question here, just because Annie's down here, and then we'll go up to this gentleman further back.
It's an observation, really. Yes, it's an observation. I created a load of films once for a company, big company. I was a learning designer. And I made silent movies. So I made a whole bunch of silent movies using noises for danger. And also little flashing, fingers and things like that, pointing at things. It was incredibly quick to produce. So we just filmed a procedure, and then we flashed up things that were not so good, and we sent them out within the same week of filming. They went out all around the world to an international audience in different cultures as well. Different cultures, different languages. And I just want to present that as another option for you guys, because it's incredibly quick. And if you're working internationally, you don't have to worry about subtitles or anything else. It doesn't work for everything, but for health and safety, it actually works really well.
That's a great idea. I think we might try that. That's great.
Thank you. That's really helpful. So Annie, this gentleman just about halfway back on that side.
It's a question about the first engineering video and the way you did your presentation. So the first one you showed us with the shark fin and the guy with the snorkel was obviously over the top. But you did a really interesting and creative presentation with the horror movies and Freddy Krueger and stuff. So, and I just wondered, despite the madness of the first engineering video, did any of that creativity and fun and visual metaphor and what have you come into any of your videos?
Well, I think this is usually the content is somewhat defined by the guys who are making it. We've unlocked an entirely hidden pool of talent within our organization that I wish I really could show you more of these videos, because they are fantastic. I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg. Again, it has to be appropriate to be viewed, and plus it has to get through something of the corporate filter. So yeah, no, it's great. We've found people who have a real joy for doing this kind of thing, and it's sort of become something that they like to do as something that it's not part of their job, but it's another outlet for them to really explore a different side of their career. So it's great.
I was going to ask you Ian that actually. I was going to say, has the act of creating the video had impacts wider than the learning aspect, so engagement-wise, etc.?
Yeah, it absolutely has. We have people coming together, and it's really brought people to focus in on the tasks probably more than they ever did. People would do things different ways in different places, and all of that goodness would get lost. So this has really helped drive dialogue.
Has it driven any competition? In terms of, I've done this many videos, or my videos have been watched by this many people. I'm just thinking back to the kind of the gamification session, and just whether it's increased that side of things.
It hasn't yet, and I think it's just maybe the way we're presenting it. But that's something that I've taken away from this conference, is that, and taking away, looking at the way different people have done things, I may actually try and enable some of that functionality.
Great. Any more questions? Gemma, I don't know where the microphone is.
My question's for Ian. I thought it was an amazing presentation that you did. You guys are doing some really cool stuff. Okay. I work with video at BP, and we're trying to get into user-generated content at the minute. We've got a lot of videos at the moment, about 3,500 that have been produced by BP, or that are external content that we've curated in. But now we're trying to crack user-generated content, because I think you're absolutely right. That's where the real knowledge is, and that's where the real problems are, and that's how you can fix them. So what was the hardest thing that you've found when you've been trying to get this user-generated content thing cracked? What should I avoid?
It's very much in the review process, because we're documenting things quite often that aren't well documented. And once it gets produced, people have a different opinion on whether it's good or not. So there's a lot of facilitation and dialogue that goes on. I mean, that's the value of it. But at the same time, it can really slow things down in a bigger company where everybody thinks they know the right way to do it. And now it's on, but again, that's the value. I'd power through.
So if there's no more questions from the audience, just a quick opportunity for Emma or Ian to ask any questions either of each other or of you guys. Anything you would like to throw out there, Ian?
I struggle a lot with production, because the more user engagement you get, the production process can still take quite a long time. There's some great suggestions on how we can optimize that, but I'd certainly like to open it up to talk about great ways to sort of speed up production. How do we shoot? How do we condense the way the content is made to really accelerate that process? Because that's what kills us now. We get a lot of content, and getting it through review and getting it even minimally produced takes a lot of time.
Can we get the microphone back down, Annie? Sorry. I'm giving you a bit of a workout. I didn't see where the hands went up. I saw a couple of hands. So just here in front of the camera.
Hello. I'm a professional video maker, and I think what I always say, you've got to have a script for whatever video you're doing, and that's even if you're just filming, the most basic thing. It's all about planning. It's all about the script. So I know that you've talked about that a bit because you've got the procedure there, but I think almost if you force your user who's generating the content to write themselves a structure, or you have your facilitator guys who are good at the technical. Maybe there's some facilitator people who are good at the planning and the conceptual. You've probably already done this, but this is generally, from what you're saying, this is what it seems a little bit like the weak point. And that's how we cut down on editing time, and also make sure that you're ticking off, you're compliant as you go, because obviously you've got a script, even if it's a very high level script. And that's what we often have to have with like talking heads, for example, because, which can be quite wild, but you've still got to say, I've got to have an answer that covers this learning point, and so forth.
Yeah, that's great feedback. We sort of struggle with it, because we find that if we script it, we sort of sometimes miss out on some of the problems we catch. But at the same time, if we don't, it just goes on, and we don't get. It can sometimes be quite unusable.
I think we just had one more, just on this side, and then we'll wrap up.
I was going to say, while they're walking up, I don't know if you. And this is obviously something we tried in the past. When we were doing something similar, we found a lot of the production time was set up and set down. So we would string together one long activity that might have 4 or 5 videos in it, and then cut them up afterwards. I don't know if you do that. Because that's one of the things that we found. It was getting the camera set up, getting the angle right, getting mics set up, or whatever it was. And that took a lot of time when we've done user-generated stuff before.
Yeah, no, that's good too. I think it's all about sort of planning versus spontaneity. That getting that interplay correct to get what you want out of it.
First of all, fantastic content for both of you. Plays on two very different angles of businesses, but I think it's just great seeing it. So my background is I was a visual producer for several years, but now I run a digital learning team because there's a big push for mixed media and learning now. So what I've discovered over the last couple of years is that there's two types of people. There's L&D people, and then there's people who are in video production or media production. And very rarely do we find people who straddle both worlds. So what we found was really good was bringing in experts in video production, and rather than sitting them down and getting them to create video producers out of our internal staff when we wanted to bring production internally, we sat down with them and we said, you know a lot, like a lot. But what are the really key things? And we talked about workflow, about sanity, both in terms of your process and your mental sanity, and the little tips and tricks, because a video producer of 10 years, if they sit down with an intern or a graduate or whoever it is in the team that's been assigned as young, curious, and probably most capable, it's too much, and they can't pass it on. They can't pass on the wisdom. But what they can do is they can say, hey, make a checklist, and that first checklist is, get rid of all your extraneous content, label things properly, use a template, clean up your hard drives afterwards, because we found we were just losing hundreds of hours, literally, and maybe even more that we couldn't measure, simply because everything was a mess, because the creative process by itself is messy and it's impulsive. So working with our external suppliers and say, come in and give us the knowledge, and we would buy in contractors occasionally to do that handover, but saying, focus on what creates efficiency, and here are our big bugbears. And that's worked well with us. The problem I now have is trying to get the business to buy into video.
That's very great. That's great feedback.
Great. I think you'll be pleased to know, Annie. I think we're about at time to kind of wrap it up. So thank you for your kind of feedback as well as all your questions. And if we can just do final thank you to Ian and to Emma for a great presentation.